Have you ever trusted someone so deeply you'd stake your whole future on them, only to discover everything was a lie? This is the story of a brother's betrayal, a tangled web of family secrets, and one young man's fight to reclaim his life. If you love suspenseful family dramas with a killer twist, you won't want to miss this. I still dream about the apartment on Fraser Street, the sound of rain on thin glass, the spatter and hum of it, muffling the fights downstairs. My brother, Evan, used to joke we could tell the forecast by how loud the neighbors got. If it was raining, it was always a thunderstorm inside too. I was 6 when he first climbed into my bed and said, "You got me, Sam, no matter what." In the dark, his voice was steady, his arm curled over my back. Back then, I believed him with the kind of blind certainty only a child can have. We survived those years in lockstep. Evan figured out ways to stretch groceries and slip past our father's moods. I still remember his tricks for heating up soup without a stove, leaving a can by the window where the sun hit, using a lighter under a spoon. "It's not so bad," he'd say, blowing the steam off. "Someday we'll eat in our own restaurant and laugh about this." I'd grin like it was a magic spell, as if speaking it could make it true. He protected me from bullies, from the world, and mostly from the ache of knowing our parents didn't care much what happened to us. When I got older and the violence stopped being random background noise and started to feel personal, I clung to Evan like a shield. He was 3 years older, but seemed so much more. Sometimes he'd disappear for a night and come back with bruised knuckles and a half-empty backpack. But I never asked, I just trusted. Years went by, things changed, but not much. School ended, the apartment stayed the same, except emptier, colder. Evan worked odd jobs, always slipping me cash, he insisted, was extra. I tried to do the same, but my hours at the grocery store only added up to spare change. That winter the landlord finally forced us out, and we scraped by on couches, favor from relatives and Evan's promise. One more lucky break, and we'll start over. It came on a rainy night, the kind when everything feels about to break. We were sharing a mattress on the floor of someone else's guest room. Evan had papers spread out on the bed, tracing lines and numbers with a chewed-up pen. He was so sure, so vibrant, his words painting a future as warm as the lamplight on our faces. "I found a place," he said, "a cafe space on Taylor Street. It's a rough block, but the rent's good, Sam. All we need is a little capital to get the keys and fix it up. I've talked to the landlord, started drafting business plans. We're close." He took my hand and squeezed it like I was about to back away. "They won't approve the loan for me. My history's too messy, debts, stupid stuff. But your credit's perfect. You could get approved no sweat. Then we're in. I'll handle the setup, the permits, the renovations. All you have to do is sign. I promise I'll look after everything." I was 19, so eager to belong to matter, especially to Evan. He pressed the paperwork in front of me, told me all the risk was worth it. "This is it, Sam. Our way out, our life, our rules. You just have to trust me one more time." So I did. I met Evan at the bank wearing my only collared shirt, hands shaking as I signed. The manager congratulated me for taking initiative. The money came through in less than a week. Evan gave me a fast, fierce hug. "You won't regret it, little brother," he said. After that, it was all Evan with his phone calls, his errands, his late nights gone from the apartment. He said the place needed repairs before I could see it. "Don't worry, I'm handling it," he'd say. "Stay focused on work, keep your head down at the store. I'll bring you in when it's time." He kept all the paperwork in a folder I was never allowed to open. "It's just chaos right now, Sam," he'd say. "Let me organize everything first. You'll just get stressed for no reason." Weeks bled into months. Every time I asked about the cafe, Evan had another excuse: permits, delayed wiring problems, a city inspection. He stopped coming home some nights. When I tried calling, sometimes the line rang out, sometimes it went straight to voicemail. "Just a rough patch," he'd text me, usually past midnight. "All good, you'll be proud of me soon." He talked less and less. I started to wonder if there ever was a building on Taylor Street, if any of it was real. Eventually his keys never turned in our lock again. The messages stopped. I waited for him to walk through the door or call to tell me everything was finally ready. I wanted to believe there was still a future, with a Sam and Evans painted on frosted glass, a place full of morning light, cinnamon, and peace. I wanted to believe he'd show up and make it all true with a laugh and a hug. Instead, I got a letter in the mail, notice of default amount due, $91,368.72. My name alone, not Evan's. No note, no explanation. I went to Taylor Street searching for our place, but there was nothing. No new cafe, no sign with our names, not even a renovation in progress. Just shuttered shops and a wind-whipped for lease sign taped in a dusty window. In the end, it wasn't a blowout or a betrayal. With yelling and tears, Evan just disappeared, slipped out of my life, and left everything in my hands. When I think back to Fraser Street, to rain beating against thin glass, and Evan promising you got me, I wonder if I should have known, some thunder you only hear when it's already past. Days passed, then weeks. I told myself Evan was just laying low, that soon my phone would light up with his name, a string of half-apologies and new promises. Every morning I checked my email, my texts, the mailbox. Nothing. What I had was the loan statement, stamped in angry red, a heavy envelope from the bank, landing every month with increasing urgency. I carried it around in my backpack, too ashamed to show anyone, convinced the act of holding onto it might keep the rest of my life from coming unglued. I stopped going to work after my third late shift. My manager pulled me aside, said I looked hollow-haunted. Maybe I needed some rest. I almost laughed. Rest was the one thing I couldn't find. Not with the worry gnawing a hole in my chest, not with the sense that I was walking around inside a nightmare designed just for me. I tried calling Evan's old friends, but most of them hadn't seen him in months or years. That guy's a ghost, one said, not unkindly. He's always had a way of getting out of tight spots. But this wasn't a tight spot. I wanted to scream. This was the end of my life as I knew it. I searched online, found nothing except empty profiles and silence. If there was a trail, it was cold. I made a list, every possible place he might go, the basement apartments we'd squatted in, the park benches by the river where we'd sat on long, hopeless nights. I wandered the city for hours, asking at hostels, waiting near back entrances of late-night diners, searching for a familiar shape in the shifting crowd. But every familiar place had changed, or maybe I had. My brother wasn't hiding out, he was just gone. I replayed every conversation, searching for clues I might have missed, signs of doubt, stress, desperation. Had he sounded afraid? Was he lying all along? I even dug through the scraps of paperwork Evan had left behind, but found only blank forms, a forgotten receipt for pizza and a rumpled flyer for a second-hand furniture store. Nothing that explained $90,000 or a vanished brother. It felt like falling in reverse. Each day stripped away more of what I thought was true. I realized I didn't know Evan's friends, his routines. Not really. What did he do when I wasn't watching? Who did he call late at night? He'd always made himself bigger than life, but suddenly all I had was empty space where he used to be. I called the bank, voice shaking, asking for help or for any information about the loan. "Everything is in your name, Mr. Bishop," the woman said, reading from her screen with tired sympathy. "You're responsible for the total balance. I'm afraid we can't speak to anyone else." When I asked if there had been any other contact, the line crackled. There was an initial deposit into an account, withdrawn over the course of several weeks. After that, nothing. No repayments, no activity. I'm sorry. I started getting calls from unknown numbers, collections polite at first, then sharper, colder. I hung up. Sometimes I screamed at the receiver. Sometimes I sat and cried until my hands hurt from clenching the cord. My world had shrunk to one bedroom, the blue light of my computer and the memory of Evan's arms around my shoulders, as a kid promising I'd never be alone. But I was so alone that sometimes it scared me, how empty a room could feel at night, how even my own thoughts seemed too loud. Desperation nudged me toward anger, then self-blame. How could I have been so stupid? Everyone knew Evan was the risk-taker, the one who could charm money out of air but never hold on to it. I was supposed to be the cautious one, but the truth was, I'd wanted to believe him so badly I'd needed to. What did that make me? A fool? Or just someone who loved his brother too much? I found myself on Taylor Street, again staring at the address Evan had given me. I pressed my face to the dusty window, looking for some sign of the life I'd borrowed money to build. The place was gutted, Bare brick walls, empty shelves, graffiti, no cafe, not even a ghost of one. I asked around. The owner told me no one named Evan or Sam had ever signed a lease there, never even walked through the door. The truth hit me in waves. Evan had never intended for us to build anything. The dream was nothing but a shell, a lie built from years of trust, family, shared pain. I wandered through those days half alive, sick, with the weight of my own name on a piece of paper that threatened to erase my future. Friends stopped calling after I missed enough texts. I could barely bring myself to answer the phone anymore. What could I say? That the only person I'd ever truly trusted had ruined me, and I let him. I didn't sleep. Instead, I watched the lights from passing cars slide across my ceiling and tried to remember the last time Evan hugged me, the last time. His laughter made me feel like everything was going to be okay. I'd spent my whole life building my world around one promise. You got me, Sam, no matter what. The words rang hollow now, a memory stretched thin and ready to break. I sat in the dark, the bank's envelope open in my lap, the numbers on the page burning through my chest. There was no cafe, no brother, no escape, only the long, silent nights and the echo of someone I used to know. 3 years. You'd think time would sand down the sharp edges, that wounds would scab over. Sometimes it felt like I'd almost gotten there, like the memory of Evan's betrayal was just a shadow in the room, nothing more. I was living smaller, quieter, still working retail, still chipping away at the debt, never really outpacing it. I'd stopped waiting for apologies or explanations. If I thought of Evan, I tried to picture him as already gone, a bad story that had finally faded out. Then one weekday afternoon, as the city dragged towards spring, I came home and saw a silver sedan parked outside my building. The window rolled down. And there he was, Evan, my brother, or the echo of him. Lean, clean-shaven suit and sunglasses, someone else's idea of a successful man. At first I just froze. It took a second to remember how to breathe. He stepped from the car and gave me a wide, easy grin. Sam, he said, like we'd last seen each other last week, not 3 years and a lifetime ago. You look good, little brother. How've you been? It was Julia who climbed out next. Julia of all people. She was taller than I remembered, softer around the eyes but sharp in the cheekbones. I remembered her in a flash, our old friend from block parties and library corners, who'd once sworn she'd never live anywhere but the city, and who had cried the summer. Her family moved across town. Now she was beside Evan, her hand on his arm, diamond flashing on her finger. Sam, she said, her voice gentle but uncertain, it's been too long. I managed a greeting, but my heart was thudding so hard I couldn't hear my own voice. A flood of conflicting urges nearly pinned me to the spot. I wanted to turn away, to leave them standing there in the afternoon light, but a deeper, more desperate part of me needed to know. Why now? Why with Julia? What had Evan been doing all this time? And how was he standing before me, looking untouched? He asked too casually, "Got time for coffee?" Julia echoed him with a soft, uncertain smile. I almost said no. I wanted to say no, but the curiosity, sharp aching, won out. I needed answers or closure, or maybe just to see the face of the person who'd left me buried in debt. I nodded, mouth dry. The word sure slipped out like a reflex, so I followed, not sure if I was stepping into a memory or a trap. We found a table by the window at a quiet little place nearby. Evan ordered with easy confidence, then turned to me as if the years had melted away. He did most of the talking, asking about old friends, trading stories, telling just enough about his businesses, buying into projects, helping friends with investments, property deals here and there. Not the details, but enough to let me know he was doing well. He never said where the money came from. He never said a word about the cafe, about the loan, about the vanished years. It was like he'd rewritten his own history and expected me to follow along. I listened, trying to keep my bitterness beneath the surface. Part of me was hungry for every detail, cataloging every scrap of information, every gesture, every glance at Julia. The other part wanted to upend the table, to force the truth out of him. Then and there, in front of everyone. "I'm doing all right now," he said at last, leaning back the cuff of his new jacket, catching the light. "Some smart decisions, a bit of luck. It's been a busy couple years." Julia barely spoke. Sometimes her gaze found mine, and I recognized the shy, thoughtful girl from long ago, the one who'd watched me and Evan chase each other through alleys and vacant lots, the one who once cried when we fought and cheered when we made up. Now she was Evan's wife, and I couldn't read her expression at all. The silence stretched. I fought the urge to ask the only questions that mattered. Why did you do it? Where did you go? Did you ever feel guilty? Instead, I swallowed them, tasting old shame. Evan finished his coffee, glanced at Julia, and offered a practiced smile. Let's do this again soon. No reason to let the past keep us apart, right? I could only nod. As they walked out ahead of me, my chest felt tight with all the words I hadn't said. I couldn't forgive him, not yet, maybe not ever. But I wasn't ready to walk away either. I needed to know more, about Evan, about Julia, about what they'd really done in the years I'd been left behind. The message arrived late, jittering my phone across the bedside table in the darkness. Can we talk? I need help. Please keep this between us. Julia. For a full minute I just stared at her name. My first instinct was suspicion. The last time I'd seen Julia, she'd been tucked neatly under Evan's arm, slipping into a life that was never meant for me. But the desperation in her words clawed past my bitterness. I thumbed a shaky reply. Where we met the next evening, in a park near the edge of downtown, the kind of place where floodlights buzzed and teenagers smoked behind bleachers, I found her on a bench under a willow tree, hands clasped in her lap, staring at the ground as if it might answer for her. For a moment neither of us spoke. The wind shook, the leaves, and Julia pulled her coat tighter, barely glancing up when I sat beside her. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice soft, like we were both afraid to break whatever spell held the night together. What's this about? I kept my words measured. I was curious, angry, maybe a little afraid. Mostly I was tired, of games, of old wounds that never healed. Julia's eyes darted to mine, then away. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but she hesitated, searching for words. Things aren't right, Sam. With Evan, with everything, I can't talk to my family and I can't talk to him. I tried to read her face, worried, yes, but I couldn't tell for who. What happened? She dug her nails into her palm. It started small. My family, my parents, trusted Evan to help with some of the business accounts. My father never cared about details, and Evan, he was so charming. They let him handle things, investments, property deals, payments. It was easier than having family arguments. Evan always said he'd take care of us. She took a shaking breath, the mask cracking. Then money started to disappear. Not a lot at first, but enough. My parents noticed gaps in the ledgers, transfers they didn't authorize. My father wanted to write it off as mistakes, but I started digging, and I found out some of the accounts weren't just in Evan's name, they were in mine. The news hit me like a stone to the gut. He forged your signature. Julia shook her head. No, not forged. He knew my security questions. He made me sign things I didn't read for routine. Filings. He has access I can't take back. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Now there's more missing than I can hide, and I'm scared, Sam. Scared for my parents, for myself. If I bring this up, it all comes down. Our business, our family, we'd be ruined. A heavy silence fell between us. Streetlights blinked on in the parking lot, painting Julia's face in uneasy amber. I felt old instincts kick in, the urge to help her, to believe her, to be the friend she needed. But after everything with Evan, trust came hard. She must have sensed my hesitation. She reached for my hand, held it between hers, and I felt the faint tremor. I think Evan's lying to me, she said, tears bright in her eyes. About the money, about everything. He leaves late, takes calls in the middle of the night. Sometimes I catch him watching me like he's deciding if I'm a threat or an ally, and Her voice broke. I don't know what to do. Please, Sam. I need someone who isn't afraid of him, someone who will find the truth. She let go, wiping her face quickly, embarrassed. If it helps, I've saved what I could. Screenshots, transaction records, things that didn't add up. I'll send them if you want to look. A part of me screamed to walk away, but some tangle of loyalty and pity held me there. Maybe I needed to prove to myself I wasn't just collateral in Evan's life, but something more. Send them, I said. I'll see what I can figure out. Julia sagged in relief. For the first time all evening, she smiled, a sad, grateful, fragile thing. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not hating me. I tried to hold her gaze, but the old ache made me look away. It's not about hate, I said, my voice quiet and true. It's about not wanting anyone else to get hurt. A sharp wind swept down the empty street. We both stood awkward as strangers. Now she squeezed my hand once before disappearing into the darkness, her footsteps quick and light. I walked home with a growing sense of dread, her worries settling into me like cold rain. By the time I reached my apartment, the first emails were waiting. PDFs, scanned ledgers, photos of texts, notes about arguments and missing hours. I printed them out, covered my desk, and stared at the tangled patterns until the words blurred. For the first time in years, I felt a purpose sharp enough to cut through the numbness. I promised myself this time I wouldn't look away. If Evan was a monster, I would finally see his true face. One way or another, the truth was coming. I owed it to myself. The work nearly broke me. I hadn't realized what a job it would be, sorting truth from the 1,000 little half-lies Evan had left behind, and the worry in Julia's messages. My desk disappeared under a drift of paper. Account numbers, screenshots, business records, cryptic memos, text after text from Julia marked urgent or please look at this. I started with the basics. Evan's business names. There were too many, each vague, each pointing to yet another shell. Some had overlapping phone numbers and addresses. None were real places, just dead links and mail drops. On social media there were photos of Evan in new suits at industry events, always just out of focus, always smiling. There was nothing and everything at the same time. Julia was eager, sometimes too eager. She fed me leads, urged me towards certain companies with a nudge in her tone. This is where the biggest transfers happened. I think Evan said something about this one. Look deeper for me. I followed obedient, always a step behind. After a week I gave up, pretending I could untangle it alone. I called Caleb, an old classmate from a math seminar who now worked at a fintech startup. I know it's weird, I admitted after giving him the bare bones, but can you take a look at these ledgers? There's something I'm missing. He took the files, but a few days later his message was grim. Sorry man, it's a rat's nest. The money bounces between holding companies, offshores places. I can't even get data for mess. Some of these shell names change every few months. If this is just Evan, he's gotten a lot savvier, or someone's helping him. It should have made me want to quit. Instead, I just felt more useless. I stayed up late clicking back and forth between emails and spreadsheets, falling asleep with old receipts taped to my laptop. Some mornings I thought about telling Julia I was out. She needed a private investigator, not a half-broke ex-brother-in-law with an internet connection. But the messages kept coming. Any luck? She'd ask, sometimes at 2 a.m. Don't let him destroy everything, Sam. I can't do this without you. Late one night, blurry-eyed, I noticed something strange. A cluster of withdrawals from one of Evan's accounts always matched the dates Julia insisted we meet in person. At first I dismissed it, but the pattern repeated every time she asked to go over things together. Large transfers zipped out of Evan's account, landing in a chain of new bank accounts, all created using a version of Julia's maiden name. It made no sense, unless the meetings were the point alibis. I was the audience, the prop. I flipped back through all of Julia's tips, realizing she'd pushed me toward the least threatening trails and away from the spiked, tangled roots underneath. I dug into public records, chasing leads into city business registries. I found a set of shell companies tied to Julia's extended family stretching back decades. Her father's trust, big, glossy, respectable on the surface, held interests in property companies that owned half the blocks near Taylor Street. Then, scrolling through news alerts, I froze City Trust under investigation for ties to organized crime. Buried in the article was the name of Julia's family foundation, listed as a minority stakeholder in a property management firm allegedly used to launder millions. The world tilted. Julia hadn't just married Evan for love or status. She was tied to something much bigger. Maybe Evan had started as her shield, or her patsy. The next day, Julia reached out with more urgency, suggesting we needed professional help. She wanted to introduce me to a family friend. An investigator, she said, who could move things along faster and protect us all. My gut went cold. We met the investigator, Alan Barker, in a quiet office over a tailor's shop. He was bland, polite, with a handshake too practiced and a business card stamped with a logo that looked fake. He asked a lot about what I knew, too much back home. I searched his credentials. The college he listed hadn't had a law program in 20 years. He had no real online presence, just a generic headshot and a glowing LinkedIn page, written in the kind of English that made my teeth itch. I sent his name to Caleb. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Sam, you need to be careful. That guy's firm was in the news. Shell company, accused of laundering for a big real estate outfit, ring any bells." A week later, I was invited to a party at Julia's parents' place. I almost didn't go, but I wanted answers. Anything to prove I wasn't crazy. The investigator was there, standing with a group of Julia's cousins, laughing like they'd grown up together. I watched as Julia pulled him aside, whispering urgently, her fingers digging into her purse. She caught me staring. "That's just Alan," she said quickly, too quickly. "My cousin's friend. He's very discreet." I nodded, playing dumb. Even as everything in me screamed, the puzzle pieces rearranged themselves. Julia had been using me, using Evan. Her family was the center, and I'd been shoved into the periphery as distraction, as a witness, maybe as a scapegoat. I walked home through the city's bright, cold head full of alarms. Whatever Julia's real game was, I was in it now, and every old loyalty to my brother was souring into something sharp and new resolve. The night before, I barely slept. My mind replayed every possible outcome, every way things could splinter and collapse. Julia sensing the trap, the investigator recognizing one of the journalists, Evan appearing at the last second, to ruin it all. I had nightmares of being handcuffed, of headlines with my name and Evan's smeared together, brotherly betrayal. But in the morning there was nothing left to do but follow through. The old cafe on Taylor Street was hollow and echoing, the paint flaking and the lights sickly overhead. I arrived early, heart pounding, and watched as two battered sedans parked across the street. I recognized the reporters from the newspaper's byline photos, one with wiry glasses and restless hands, another setting up in the back of their van, fumbling with a laptop and tangle of wireless mics. "You're sure the feed's working?" I asked through the cracked window. She glanced up, grinning. "We'll catch every word. The police are listening in, waiting for the go." I checked my pockets for the USB drive, a decoy holding nothing but an encrypted text file that read "nice try." In my other pocket, the real drive thumped against my thigh, holding every document Julia had helped manufacture, every transfer I could piece together, every screenshot she'd failed to erase. I dialed the burner phone. My voice, strained and higher, choked out the rehearsed lines. "They know everything you need to make a deal. Don't trust Sam. Someone's going to turn on you, soon." Then I killed the line, wiped it, and dropped it in the garbage bin out front. Not long after Julia arrived, with Alan, her investigator, and a third man. I didn't recognize all: crisp collars, stiff body language, and the smell of cologne, too expensive for a rainy morning. Julia's eyes were bloodshot, but hard. "So," she said, folding her arms impatient. "Let's keep this simple, Sam. No need for more drama. Just tell us what you've found and we'll work something out." I put on my most nervous smile, willing my hands to shake. "All of it's here." I dangled the decoy USB. "Every transaction, every shell company, copies of your dad's accounts, Alan's little offshore side business, even the property ties. You wanted evidence, Julia. You said you'd do anything to keep this quiet." She snatched the drive. "See, you're not as dumb as you look, Sam. Evan always said you were too soft for this world, Lord. Should have let you drown in debt." The words hit, but I swallowed the sting. I let her gloat, let Alan hover behind her, scanning the shadows as if expecting a trap, but seeing only old dust and the crooked chairs stacked against the wall. "You know," Julia continued, tossing the drive from hand to hand, "Evan was never more than a distraction. He thought he was smart, but he never saw the real play. None of you did." Her laugh was sharp and dry. "It's over now, Sam. I'd suggest you take what I give you and disappear, like your brother did." I glanced up at the security mirror, just a flash to signal the team outside. Alan shifted uneasy, out on the street. The van doors burst open. The journalists spilled out with handheld cameras, voice recorders, and backup batteries slung from their belts. I heard the first shout of "Live Channel 12," and Julia spun, face whitening as the doors crashed open and microphones swept in like an accusation. Julia Corcoran, can you comment on your role in the City Trust laundering case? Are these the transfers you authorized? Alan Barker, did you organize the property shell networks? Microphones, lights, and lenses flooded the space, the feed already running to every screen in the city and half a dozen police laptops. Julia's composure cracked. She started to lunge for me, then stopped. You set me up, she hissed. The real USB drive was in my palm, now flashing in the camera lights. All here, I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. Everything you did, everything you planned to pin on Evan, on me. You can't bury it. You can't buy it off. Outside I heard sirens wailing. Closer, 2 officers, plainclothes but clearly police, pushed through the crowd, reading from warrants as they handcuffed Julia, Alan, and their silent companion Julia, shouted at the cameras a wild litany of denial and rage, but it didn't matter. In the eyes of the world, the mask was gone. The game was over. For the first time since I signed the loan papers, I felt light. My hands didn't shake. I watched Julia led away, her face blazing with fury and humiliation, and I felt nothing but relief. A reporter cornered me, breathless. Did you know the scale of what you were exposing? I shook my head. No, I said, but I knew I had to stop letting other people use me. I just wanted to tell the truth. That was all that mattered. Now the truth, broadcast undeniable. When the police were gone, I stepped outside into the pale sunlight. The cafe's windows sparkled with rain. Somewhere Evan was free of Julia, of her family's poison. Maybe for once, he could start over. Maybe I could too. There was no hug, no reunion. Evan wouldn't be in my life again. Not after what he'd done, not after what I'd learned about all of us. But I could walk away. For the first time, I wasn't haunted by the past. I headed home, the USB drive heavy in my pocket, a trophy maybe, or a warning, but it was mine. The truth was mine, and for the first time since I was a kid, that felt like enough. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more gripping tales of betrayal and redemption, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. And let us know in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Sam's shoes? Your thoughts could inspire our next story.